All right, let's dive into a really fascinating clash of titans. On one side, you have the incredible, unstoppable force of modern science. And on the other, a few problems so deep, so fundamental, they seem completely immovable. These aren't just little puzzles, they're mysteries at the very heart of what it means to be real. So the core question is, what happens when our best tools for figuring out the universe just stop working? When they run headfirst into questions that shake the very foundations of everything we thought we knew. We're not talking about small stuff here. We're talking about genuine black holes in our understanding. And really, it all comes down to two massive challenges, what folks in the know call the hard problems. First, in quantum physics, the closer we look at the building blocks of reality, the more it seems like, well, they aren't made of anything solid at all. Then you've got neuroscience, which is staring down the barrel of consciousness, the very thing that lets us experience the universe, but we have no idea where it is or what it's even made of. So, just to be clear, these aren't just things we'll figure out next Tuesday. The sources we're digging into today argue that they're not just puzzles, they're fundamental gaps, actual black holes, in the idea that the universe is just physical stuff. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. How does a purely materialist science handle these giant, inconvenient questions? Well, according to our source material, it often falls back on two main tactics to kind of sidestep the whole issue. The first tactic is a pretty serious accusation, and it's summed up perfectly in this quote. It's this idea of basically just kicking the can down the road, forever. What does that mean? Well, it's the old, hey, don't worry about it now. We figured out so much, we're bound to figure this out eventually. Just give us a few more centuries. But for a lot of people, that's not an answer. It feels like a way to just dismiss a huge mystery that's staring us right in the face, right now. And the second tactic? Well, it's a little more aggressive. It's about burying the problem under a mountain of complicated words that sound smart but don't really say anything. And here's a fantastic example. To say that your consciousness, your experience of love and art and the color red is just a mismatch in the hardware and software, does that actually explain anything? Or is it just a fancy-sounding way to hide the fact that we don't have a clue? It's that jungle of jargon. So all this leads us to a really radical idea. What if we've been looking at this whole thing completely backward? What if these gaps in what we know aren't problems to be solved, but are actually clues pointing to a much, much bigger picture? This quote right here is the absolute heart of the argument. It flips our whole perspective upside down. See, we usually think of our scientific knowledge as this big, solid wall, the brickwork. And maybe there are a few little cracks where mystery can live. But this metaphor says, nope, you've got it wrong. It suggests that our knowledge, the brickwork, is actually just a few little islands floating in a vast, endless ocean of things we don't understand. The gaps aren't the exception. The gaps are the main event. Okay, so if measuring stuff with instruments has its limits, what's the alternative? Our source points to a totally different path to knowledge, one that's based on direct, personal experience. And it uses an absolutely wild story to illustrate the point. Let me introduce you to Ramakrishna, a young guy on a spiritual quest, and his teacher, a very serious, no-nonsense man named Totapuri. And this isn't some ancient legend. This story is actually well documented from the 1800s. So Totapuri tells Ramakrishna to do something that sounds simple but is incredibly hard. Meditate only on the formless spirit. But Ramakrishna can't do it. The image of his beloved goddess keeps popping into his head. So his teacher gives him this shocking command. The next time she appears, take the sword of your mind and chop her in half. Ramakrishna, determined, does exactly that in his imagination, and boom. In a single instant, his mind goes silent, and he achieves the highest state of meditation. Now, here's the part that is just mind-blowing. To get to that exact same state of consciousness himself, it took his teacher, Totapuri, 40 years of intense practice. 40 years! Ramakrishna did it in about 5 minutes. His teacher was absolutely floored. And we're not talking about a quick flash of insight here. Totapuri, not quite believing it, locked Ramakrishna in a room to see what would happen. And for 3 full days, the kid just sat there, completely motionless, like a statue, totally absorbed in this profound state. So what's the big takeaway from this story? At the end of the day, this kind of spirituality isn't about what you believe, it's about what you can experience. It points to a powerful way of knowing reality directly.
something that happens far away from any science lab. This is knowledge you get firsthand. Okay, so let's bring it all home. This is the moment where that world of inner experience smashes right into the hard problem of quantum physics. And trust me, it's pretty wild.
To connect these two worlds, the source uses this amazing ancient metaphor. Imagine that ultimate reality, they call it Brahman, is like a huge, perfectly clear jelly. You can't see it or touch it, but then an impulse from within it, called Maya, causes a shudder, a vibration, and that shudder is what makes it visible to us as the entire universe. The really important part? The jelly and the shudder are the same thing.
And this brings us to the absolute core of the whole thing. Look at this. On one side, you have this ancient philosophy born from direct experience, saying reality is a fundamental substance that shudders into being. And on the other side, you have modern quantum physics saying the universe isn't made of solid stuff, but is literally existence that is shuddering. I mean, come on, the language is practically identical.
This is the truly staggering idea our source leaves us with, that these two totally different paths, one based on thousands of years of looking inward, the other on a century of math and experiments, have somehow arrived at the exact same bizarre and beautiful description of what reality is. So, that's the big question we're left with, isn't it? When our scientific instruments hit a wall, do we just give up? Or do we maybe consider that there's another, equally valid way of knowing? At the end of the day, is reality what our machines tell us it is, or is it found in the very consciousness that's doing the experiencing in the first place?